Live, chalo. Good morning, everybody. है ना? So we'll start with ancient India, and the topic of the day is prehistory. Before coming to prehistory, for a few minutes, maybe for 20 minutes, I want to discuss one more thing in a very brief manner: the timeline of ancient India. What is the overall timeline? What do we expect? What are the very important highlighting features of every phase? In history, it is always important to have the macro view always, because it is very easy to get lost in the woods and lose the larger perspective, the meta perspective. So whenever we go deeper, we should not lose the reference point of the larger perspective. So let us do that thing very quickly, phase by phase. What are the important achievements, or what are the important characteristics, and then we shall come back to prehistory. Okay. Again, the first phase would obviously be prehistory only. Prehistory is a very long period where we traveled the journey from nomadic life to the settled village life. That entire transformation of human culture took place over thousands and lakhs of years through prehistory. रिजल्ट कब आ रहा है मोहम्मद अख्तर? हम अभी तैयारी कर रहे हैं 2026 की, तो एक साल बाद पक्का आएगा, है ना? So this would be about 5 lakh years to about, we can say, 10,000 years before Christ, roughly. This is not exact, but roughly. And this can be divided. This is the first phase, that is the Paleolithic. और चलो एक काम करते हैं, अभी years को लिखते नहीं है. Things will become complicated unnecessarily. We'll come to years very soon. It is divided into Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and Neolithic. We will discuss these things today in detail. But lithic means stone age, paleo is old, meso is middle, neo is new. Very basic. Now, Paleolithic is, of all these three phases, the longest. The longest. It is here we have very slow development of human biology also and culture also. This is the longest era of human survival on the surface of the earth, Paleolithic. And we have, as I said, both biological evolution and cultural evolution taking place at the same time. Obviously, biological much slower than cultural, and cultural would come after biological. तो logical है, ठीक है. And this is the time from where we have the beginning of the famed Bhimbetka caves also, which is UNESCO site. Now, after that comes Mesolithic era. The Mesolithic era is the one in which you have the beginning of animal domestication. From becoming hunter, we started to become herders. So animal domestication is the one which starts in the this era. And there are other features also which we shall discuss in some time. Neolithic is, as everybody knows, the threshold of civilization where we started to have agriculture. That is the plant domestication. The moment you have plant domestication, you have to settle to one place. If you settle, you create villages. You create villages, you have community. Entire thing starts gradually from there. So you have the beginning of the agriculture or plant domestication plus settled life, because you have agriculture, you settle at one place. So this is the very long gradual phase, at the end of which comes something called as Chalcolithic or Chalcolithic age, depending on your upbringing. How do you pronounce it? It is here we start using copper as a tool or as a material for the tool. Copper. Thank you. Then you enter the next phase. So even before Chalcolithic era, may you have copper tool, but what is copper being used for? It is being used for both war and agriculture. It is the time when you have across India's length and breadth lots of local farming communities emerging. So India may agriculture starts in Neolithic era, but it is in the Chalcolithic era that India become agrarian landscape. In different parts of India, we have local village communities emerging in this Chalcolithic era. They use copper. Now, some of those communities become advanced in copper usage and they discover the use of bronze. So, Bronze Age is nothing but a subset of Chalcolithic Age. And once they have bronze, which is a better material, they have better control over the environment. So, they create the Harappan civilization. So, next phase would be Harappa. In Harappa, we have the entry of next phase called Protohistory. Harappa. You have something called as first urbanization. Harappa also moved from early phase to mature phase to low later phase, etc. But the peak period is from 2600 BCE to 1900 BCE. 500 साल 500 years is the peak mature period, and it took more than 1000 years to reach there, and then very soon it collapsed afterwards. So Harappa, it is the first urbanization. Because the script of Harappa is not yet deciphered, I think we know that there is some script, but we don't know how to read it. So lots of the things about it are still very mysterious and thereby debatable. We have to discover those debates and arguments in detail. That is a very fascinating chapter. Next comes Vedic era. Vedic era is another extremely debatable era. This phase is also about 1000 years long. 1000 saal. It's a long time span, which is divided into early and later. So we have some Vedic literature which is older than the other Vedic literature. And in those 1000 years, we have massive transformation. These Vedic people are residing in North India in some part like Haryana, Punjab, Western UP, that region. So in the rest of India, at the very same time, what do we have? Chalcolithic. That continues. In some corner we have Harappa, in some other corner we have Vedic, but entire India continues to remain in the Chalcolithic phase. Now, Vedic era, we have Vedic literature which creates profound philosophy that is the foundation of Indian civilization and in many respects. But the point is that from Vedic era, actually again, in between Vedic era, we have transition from copper to iron. So, first half of Vedic era is copper, second half is iron. You have Vedic literature, which is largely, not largely actually, completely religious and liturgical in nature. But from religious literature, we try to derive the non religious aspects. That is our duty. It is after that we have the beginning of historic India. And the first era is Mahajanapada. Mahajanapadas. Now, Mahajanapada is a notion that we find in Buddhist and Jain text because these texts tell us that there were 16 great states in North India. Shodasha Mahajanapada, like Avanti, or we have Magadha, Kamboj, etc., Kashi. But 16 were great states among many more states, maybe 30, 40 states, of which 16 became larger. So this is actually the other states which could not become larger are called as Janapadas. So there are many Janapadas, of which some are Mahajanapadas. And they are constantly fighting with each other. They actually are the ones who create the state for the first time, state proper. हड़प्पा का स्टेट हमें नहीं पता, but here we can say historically known first territorial states. And when I say states in a very simplistic manner, I mean that they have standing armies and bureaucracies. You have bureaucracy, you have army, which is standing army, professional army, salaried army, not the levies. So army and bureaucracy, which are permanent. Then this is also the era of second urbanization. North India, especially Ganga Valley, is dotted with lot of cities. It is the era when you have increasing social differences coming up, rich and poor, Amir and Garib, haves and have not. And it is also the era in which we have the beginning of the coinage, also the era you have the emergence of Gautam Buddha and Mahavir. So Buddhism, Jainism also come from this same era. Out of these Mahajanapadas who are constantly fighting with each other for supremacy, Mahajanapadas are more powerful. Amongst Mahajanapadas also, you have Magadha that emerges to be victorious. Almost after more than 100 years of continuous wars, it emerges to be victorious and it conquers entire North India and Deccan and gradually parts of Peninsula also. So that is the Mauryan era. Mauryan era. Mauryan was the dynasty that ruled in Magadha, and it created the first all India empire. First all India empire. Now, empires have the tendency of leaving a lot of material behind for us to study. So now we enter the phase where you have archaeological material, literature, and many other things from which we can have stories proper to know what must have happened. We know the story of Chanakya, Kautilya, we know Chandragupta Maurya, we know Ashoka, we have beginning of the inscriptions in India, epigraphy. Epigraphy is the field of inscriptions. Ashokan edicts are available, Ashokan inscriptions, epigraphy. It is also the point from which we have the availability of architecture. Hadappa had architecture. When Hadappa declined, architecture vanished. It is now, after the gap of 1000 years, again in the Mauryan era, royal buildings start to re emerge. And from then onwards till today, we have the continuous existence of royal architecture. So the history of architecture also begins here, or we have a royal architecture. Here we'll study the stories of Ashoka also in detail, but that is when we open the chapter. From Mauryan era onwards, when we go to next era, it is called as Post-Mauryan era. And this is, if you ask me personally, the most fascinating era. There are 500 years. In this 500 years, from Maurya onwards, till the rise of Guptas, when again a great empire emerges to reunite North India. Between the two empires, you have these 500 years. It is such a sad situation that this era doesn't have its own name, post Mauryan era, as if it doesn't have its own identity, because India is fragmented. From northwest, lots of foreigners are invading India again and again continuously. We have Greeks, Bactrians, Shakas, Parthians, Kushanas, etc. In Deccan and South, we have various Sangama states. We have Satavahanas. In the east, we have Kharavelas. In north, we have Shungas, Ganavas. Lots of political powers, fragmented, continuously fighting with each other. And some of the political powers are foreigners who rule over large part of India, and some of them actually try to impose their culture on us, like Greeks. Greeks are known to be very proud of their culture. Wherever they would go, they would impose their culture. So Hellenistic world. So all these things are there. So this era is very fascinating for एक तो political complexity, presence of foreigners, and वो presence भी बड़ा interesting है. One person had said there is this very famous Greek phrase, veni vidi vici. He came, he saw, he conquered. So that phrase को थोड़ा modify करके use करते हैं इस era में, that the Greeks came, Greeks saw, Indians conquered. Why? Because they may have conquered us politically, but within a few decades we conquered them culturally. They became Indianized, and that was a great marvel of achievement in itself. So all the foreigners who came did not remain foreigners over generations. They got Indianized. That is the great assimilative power of Indian civilization. So how that happened is a very interesting story, because most of you are graduated now, I am assuming, or in the final year, third year, वगैरह, है ना? So You studied in 10th standard 8th standard आज से 4 5 6 साल पहले. So it was around 2020 COVID time आप स्कूल में होंगे, right? So at that time you had different NCRTs. Now NCRTs are changing. Last year 6th standard book changed. 2 months ago 7th standard book changed. In coming months and weeks we have new 8th standard book coming possibly. So अब यहाँ पे एक एक अलग किस्म का फोकस है in the latest trend in history. Earlier क्या था? Whenever foreigners would come, what they brought as new thing and contributed to Indian culture. Every foreigner would come, invade, have some violence for generation or two, and then gradually get merged into India. And the long term consequence of foreign invasion would be some cultural import. So that was the focus of history in the early time. अब हम क्या देखते हैं? As per latest NCRTs, what they brought in India is only 50% of the story. Remaining 50% how India culturally assimilated them, how in what social systems, cultural systems were acting so as to Indianize the foreigners. That is remaining 50% of the story. That should also not be forgotten. This is the latest trend. So anyway, coming back here, we have the political fragmentation. We have the foreigner coming to India, lots of them. And then this also is the era of the rise of civilization in deep south. We have Sangam age. Sangam, matlab confluence, it actually is a kind of poetry, Tamil poetry, old Tamil poetry, the compilations of which are called Sangam poetry. And through that Sangam poetry or Sangam literature, we come to know of the era, so we call it Sangam era. We have to study the Tamil poetry also. Apart from that, this era is also the age of commerce. India is fully monetized. India is trading with the entire world. We are trading continuously with Africa, with Roman Empire, with China, with Southeast Asia. And we are the most prominent power in Indian Ocean Trade Network. So this is an age of commerce. Fantastic intercultural relationships evolving at that time. इस era में there are three, four interesting books that were written that have again long-term impact on India's culture. Positive, negative, whatever you want to see. One book of this era is Bhagavad Gita. Gita was added into Mahabharata in this age. The second book is Manusmriti. Manusmriti was also composed sometime in the post-Mauryan era and has had long-term impact on India's civilization. And the third book is Bharatamuni's Natya Shastra. And that is the very foundational text for performing arts. Just a few months ago, it was added into UNESCO Memory of the World Register. Right? So we have these three books, and if God permits, we can discuss about three books, at least 20 minutes each. Let us see, if possible. Then this is also the era where we have the beginning of something called as land grant. Land grant. Land grant is something else. It is not land gift alone. It's more than land gift. And that land grant given by the kings to the Brahmins or Buddhist Sanghas, etc., actually in the long term had huge consequences. So the very teeny tiny but very important, significant beginning of land grant occurs in this era. Satavahanas are the first known power to give land grants. So we have to study land grants in detail and their long term consequences. Then from post-Mauryan era, you go back to the Gupta era. Again, you have, at least to some extent, unified North India, north of Narmada at least. It's a re-emergence of empire. Guptas also came from Magadha only. Mauryans had come from Magadha. So Bihar has given us first two territorial empires of Indian history. Magadha. Now, sorry, Gupta. Gupta era is generally called as the golden age of India. Golden age of India for multiple reasons: political, administrative, social, cultural, religious, philosophical. In every department of life, you have greatest of the achievements, including literature and science and tech. Give an example: Kalidas from Gupta era, Ajanta paintings from Gupta era, Sarnath Buddha from Gupta era, the Mehrauli iron pillar, the pillar that never goes to rust, Gupta era, Kama Sutra, Gupta era. So all these greatest marvels of Indian civilization come from Gupta era. They indicate the prosperity and great material and philosophical heights of Indian culture. This is also the time when you have Aryabhatta and Varahamihir. So scientific level pe bhi you have great achievements. Not only that, this is also the beginning of temple architecture. Beginning of temple architecture. Temples का जो oldest surviving existing evidence है, that comes from Gupta era only. So you have such great contribution, and then there are a lot of debates about it. From the Gupta era, we go to next phase, that is our post-Gupta. The post-Gupta era is quite interesting. You know, Indian history goes in cycles: integration, disintegration, integration, disintegration. It goes on. But what is the proportion of the two sides? Are we generally more politically integrated or disintegrated? What do you want? Anybody? Listen, India has generally been fragmented politically. The moments of unification, political territorial unification, are very few. Maurya, maybe Thoda Gupta. Then directly you have to come to some moments of Sultanate. Then some years of Mughals. Then British, Marathas. But today, again, we are politically fragmented. At least 4 or 5 countries are there in this land. है ना? So that cycle goes on. Boundaries are never permanent. ठीक है? But they go beyond individual human life. So we don't get to see them. But that is the history forever in cycle. But the point is, it is exactly opposite of our neighboring country, China. China also goes through cycles of integration, disintegration, but their disintegration is exception. Integration is norm. It is opposite of India. India, where integration is exception and fragmentation is norm, at least at the political level. So when China looks at its idea of nationhood, they look at the Han Chinese racial identity, which form 90% of their population. India doesn't have that kind of thing. So we have to go back to some other aspects of culture to find out ki, are we one country? Politically, historically, there are just the moments when we were united. So we cannot look at the nationhood in the political context, state context. It is not possible, at least in the historical sense. But anyway, you come back to the post-Gupta era, you again have disintegration. This also is a very fascinating era. In North India, we have one king who was earlier considered to be great. His name was Harsha. 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 Harsha ki court mein you have Anabhatta, Yuan Sang coming to India, writing. Yuan Sang was the name of a Chinese traveler who came to India. I hope you heard his name. है ना? So he came in Harsha's era. After Harsha, there was again some blip, and within a few decades, we have the invasion of Sindh by the Arabs. Muhammad bin Qasim came. So Sindh invasion, it occurs in the same time, just a few decades after Harsha. While these things are going in north, north is completely fragmented, north is backsliding. There is not much cultural progress taking place in north in the post-Gupta era. The actual vibrancy of Indian civilization is to be found south of Narmada. In the book Discovery of India by Pandit Nehru, वो लिखते भी हैं कि उत्तर भारत मौत की नींद सो गया था, एंड इस समय तरोताजा था दक्षिण भारत. So today we should not agree with this, because no civilization, no region can be devoid of progress completely. There are some things happening in north also which are progressive, which are good, but by and large the focus is on Deccan and South India. In Deccan we have a very major territorial power called early Chalukyas. Early Chalukyas, Pulakeshin, Mangalesha, Kirtivarman, great kings. They lay the foundation of Vesara architecture of temples. And to south of them, we have Pallavas in South India. with their capital at Kanchipuram. कांचीपुरम ऐसा शहर था, कालिदास had written about it. कालिदास कहता है कि पुष्पेषु जाति, पुरुषेषु विष्णु, नारीषु रंभा, नगरेषु कांची. कि if amongst all flowers it is jati ka flower, amongst all the males it is Vishnu, amongst all the females it is Rambha, like amongst all the cities it is Kanchipuram. So he Kalidas is known for something called as comparison, metaphors, upama Kalidasasya. He thrives on similes. So this is his simile. But my point is Pallava capital was Kanchipuram, a great city. Pallavas also contributed a lot to the emergence of Dravidian architecture. Dravidian architecture. So we have to see that as well. It is in the same time we have marvelous change in India's religious landscape for two things. One thing, and both of them come from South India. One is the Bhakti movement, Tamil Bhakti movement, Alavars and Nainars, Shaivas and Vaishnavas, and devotional poetry of ecstatic emotional fervor. The other thing is Jnana Marga, Shankaracharya. Adi Shankaracharya is again from same time, he comes from Kerala. And both of these, Bhakti movement and Acharya Parampara, they start in south and gradually they come to north. By the medieval time you come to north, it is everywhere. In Padma Puran एक जगह कहा भी है, एक किताब है पद्म पुराण कि उत्पन्ना द्रविड़े भक्ति कर्नाटम वृद्धिम आगता. द्रविड़ में भक्ति का उगम हुआ. The bhakti was born in Dravidian region. Karnatam Vruddhim Agataha. By the time it came to Karnataka, it grew further. Vruddhi. Sthitak Kinchita Maharashtra. It rested in Maharashtra for some time. Gurjaram Jananatam Gataha. By the time it reached north, crossed Narmada and reached Gujarat, it became very mature. So, even in Hindi, we have very famous line, Bhakti Dravid Upajo, Layo Ramanand. प्रकट किया कबीर ने सात दीप नौ खंड. So in North India, जो भक्ति movement है, मीरा, कबीर, तुलसीदास, नानक, all of them thrive in 15th, 16th century. This is 800 years after the beginning of bhakti movement in South India. So it took the 800 year of gradual transformation from south to north. The beginning is happening in this era, the Post-Gupta era. Okay. From there, you go to the early medieval time. Early medieval is around 500 years of time span before the establishment of Delhi Sultanate. So around 800 to 1200, 750 to 1200 वगैरह. This era is the most cluttered era. India, which was a great civilization of trading and commerce. In the age of commerce, we traded via Silk Route, via Indian Ocean. Buddhism started to spread across Asia. एक कविता है डेविड अर्नोल्ड की, ही कहता है बुद्धिज्म इज लाइट ऑफ एशिया एंड लैंड ऑफ बुद्धिज्म इंडिया इज आल्सो लाइट ऑफ एशिया. So that was the situation in the post-Mauryan era, Gupta era, etc. The painting of Ajanta, which is marvelous, not only because it is beautiful, but also because within less than 100 years, literally less than 100 years, we have replicas in Sri Lanka, in Afghanistan, in China, in Indonesia. And all of them, except for Afghanistan, जो Bamiyan का था, बाकी all three of them are also today UNESCO World Heritage Sites, despite being the imitation of what was there in Ajanta. So that was the capacity of Indian culture in the 5th, 6th century. But by the time you come to this early medieval era, India is no more the age of commerce. We are looking inward. We are becoming more and more agrarian oriented. We are becoming ruralized. The amount of cash is coming down. The trade routes are shifting and also somewhat collapsing. So from trading civilization, we shift to agrarian civilization. There is some trading. It is not 100%, 200% change. But by and large, the composition, or if you know in economy, you have the baskets, the primary sector, secondary sector, tertiary sector. So the intersectoral distribution changes, becomes heavily oriented towards agriculture. It is also the era, once you are focused on agriculture, you try to stay in your own region. You don't migrate a lot. Once you don't migrate a lot, There is fragmentation of culture also. We have local ideas coming up. This is the time when all our languages of today emerge, vernacular languages. It could be Marathi, could be Bengali, could be Hindi, could be could be other languages, Punjabi. All of them have their roots in this early medieval time. The linguistic map of India transforms completely. That is also a very fascinating history. पहले क्या था? We have Pali, Prakrit, Sanskrit. उनका समय धीरे धीरे खत्म हो गया. Now we shift towards all these regional languages. So that linguistic transformation is the outcome of this early medieval era. Politically speaking, which are the dynasties there? That is a very cluttered area. In South India, we have Chola Empire, and Cholas are known to have maritime empire. In North India, we have Palas. In Bengal, the Buddhist power. In Dakhan, we have Rashtrakutas who are fighting with Arabs a lot. In the northwest and central India, we have Gurjar Pratiharas. And all of these great powers arose simultaneously, fought with each other for 200 years simultaneously, declined simultaneously. That is the 200 years of history. Once they decline, then emerge next 200 years of history where you have lots of local Rajput powers. Waghelas, Chandelas, and Chauhans, Chahamanas, etc. It is in this point of time you have Gauri and Ghazni, etc. Those stories going on parallelly. So that is early medieval. Early medieval is politically a little bit complex because there are lots of interesting details happening there. So we'll take some detailed time to study that. Is it clear so far? It is also the era of another great Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya. So the Vedanta philosophy evolves further. It is also the era of Lingayat movement, Basavanna. It is also the era of Ganeshwar Maharaj. It is also the era of massive temple building activities. Konark Surya Mandir, Martanda Surya Mandir in Kashmir, Khajuraho Mandir in Madhya Pradesh, Modhera. All these great temples of India, of which we are proud, actually are the outcome of this early medieval era. So the temple building activity, which started in the Gupta era, gradually after 500 years, it reached the pinnacle. Okay. This is the basic overview of ancient India. Now we can go back to our prehistory wala chapter. Any doubt? Any query? क्या ही होगी, कुछ पढ़ाया नहीं है अभी तक. How to take, sir, a stupid question? No question is stupid. How to take your classes effectively so that all that you teach get assimilated into our long-term memory? Should we make notes? Tushar, I don't recommend making notes from scratch. It takes a lot of time. But I understand that writing is very important. So I do two things. I give you all the major content in the handout, which is with you. But to ensure that it doesn't become unnecessarily bulky, it contains all the important facts and analysis and headings and subheadings and photos. It doesn't contain stories. Stories is something that I can tell you on the spot. If you want to mention the story, you mention it. It may happen that while teaching, I may give some additional information. That happens generally with any teacher. So only anything that is on top of the handout, you just add in the margin. Add in the margin then and there. Okay, so you enrich your handouts with that. The second thing we shall do is that we'll write answers after first week, because very first week I don't want to go there. We will not be covering enough content also for answer writing. But after one or two lectures, we'll make you write one answer every day, and we'll discuss the answer every day. We'll also solve everyday MCQs. So every day 5 to 10 MCQs and every day one answer that we have to do. And then on the weekends, on Sundays, we have tests. That is on top of that. Okay, so by the time we cover ancient and ancient ka culture, you would be thorough with all the aspects of syllabus properly for both pre and mains. Clear? That is enough about long-term memory. Vedic is proto. Don't we have Vedas? Yes, night king. Vedic is in proto. Proto का मतलब हम देखेंगे थोड़ी देर में. But proto doesn't mean only literature वाला aspect. There are various types of classifications. ठीक है? We'll discuss that. Come here to the prehistoric India now. This is another comparison in prehistory protohistory. Have you heard this word prehistory protohistory? What is the basis of division? Written material, right? So पहली बात तो understand that humans का biological evolution जो है, it can be seen through two different reference points. One reference point is to compare it with other evolutions. Could be geological time scale, could be the evolution of plants and reptiles and other things. If you compare with that, humans are the most recent of the creatures on the surface of the earth. We are very recent. Whatever happened in just few lakh years, so हम काफी नए हैं. But if you change the point of reference and compare it with the progress that we have been having in last 10,000 years, then उसके पहले जो था, it seems very slow. So उसके very, it's again relative thing. What do you compare with? That will tell you is it fast or slow. So whatever we have before writing is called as prehistory. अब ये prehistory जो है, the demarcation point as per one thinking is the idea of written material. But let me discuss that in little bit more detail, because writing was invented very recently, hardly a few thousand years ago. Even today there are many communities which don't write. So uh, if that is taken as a marker, then whatever has happened before that is prehistory. But if you look at the time span, that consumes almost entire time span of our existence. So 99% of the duration of human existence on this earth would be classified as history. The longest duration of our existence is prehistory. It is not history. That is one. Here the main source of construction would be archaeological. That would be the tools, the pottery, the settlements, the bones. That would also be some other material like archaeozoology, archaeobotany, paleo environmental analysis. So other materials also help us to understand those things. Archaeozoology मतलब क्या होता है? Old zoological records. Archaeobotany मतलब old botanical records. Paleo environment मतलब environmental study of the Paleolithic era, old era. Right? So those things also are very helpful. The point I want to make is that prehistory seems to be very mute and very silent, and because we don't have access to the written record, and because we are dependent on only architecture, which I discussed yesterday is the refused material, so lots of things we cannot capture. We don't have access to the emotions, to the ideas, to the stories, to the dreams of people, to the belief system. We can't talk about these things. We can infer them indirectly. So we have a very inherent limitation on our understanding of prehistory. And whatever the prehistoric materials we have is so patchy, so spotty, that to put them all together and create a coherent picture is also not possible today. There are lots of holes and gaps in the prehistoric study because we don't have that much of material. It will take long time before we can stitch together entire story piece by piece. Whatever we have, so it is going to be a little bit tentative. Over this enormous amount of time, early humans made extraordinary advancements, inventions, modes of communication, and language. Now, this is something I wanted to discuss. The notion of prehistory is actually very interesting. I will take 5 minutes of discussion on prehistory now. Prehistory gives a premium on writing. ये आइडिया इमर्ज कब होती है? This idea emerged during the Enlightenment time in Europe. In the 18th century, 19th century, in European history, Europeans became very self-conscious of their progress, and whatever came before, they started to categorize that into different timelines. And it is there they thought that there was a distant past when we were very savage, we were primitive, we were tribal, and that era was called as prehistory. ये अपने आप में it was a very uh, what I say, a debatable thing. कि तब तक क्या माना जाता था? As per the Bible, the world was created 6,000 years ago. So 4,000 BC something would be the time when the earth was created. उसके पहले there is nothing. And in the 19th century, suddenly we started to look at the fossils. Then Darwin came with the idea of evolution, and the history of humans, of earth, of everything that is gradually evolving, that became available to us even before 6,000 years. तो फिर ये बिफोर वाला एरा क्या है? लेट अस कॉल इट बिफोर हिस्ट्री, सो प्री हिस्ट्री. सो नोशन वाज इनिशियली चैलेंजिंग द आइडिया ऑफ रिलीजियस हिस्ट्री. वहां से लेके ये धीरे धीरे सेक्युलर बन गया, बट इट डजंट मैटर. माय मेन पॉइंट इज the moment you call prehistory when you don't have writing and history of writing is actually very arrogant notion. Why arrogant? Because the idea is writing is something superior. Written materials are that changes human self consciousness. Now we have recorded history that gives us all the idea. Is it true? The oral history continues till today. And people like Vedic people did not know how to write. They have no script. They don't write at all. Still, they composed such a marvelous literature. So, can you, by any stretch of imagination, call the composers of Vedas as primitive people? They may have some limitations, like any people, but they are not primitive. Backward log to nahi manenge unko. So, only because they don't know how to write, as if writing makes change in everything. So, that putting premium on writing is a major problem. That, and secondly, that prehistory notion is now very debated for one more reason. अब हम जानते हैं, with the evolved study of anthropology, of psychology, etc., a lot of developments actually took place in the prehistoric time. It is in prehistory that we domesticated animals and plants. Prehistory, we started to walk on the lakes, we started to speak. Symbolic language was created, writing was invented, pottery was invented, wheel was invented, fire was controlled. So, not only that, for the sake of survival, huge development took place in us culturally and biologically that impacts us even today. Why are we afraid of darkness? For example, अंधेरे का डर क्यों लगता है? Because of prehistoric. So, there is a field called evolutionary psychology. If you go by that field of evolutionary psychology, you will come to know lots of our emotions, lots of our thoughts are the outcome of evolution that took place in the prehistory. It is not a backward era. It may appear relatively slow by today's standard. It does not mean it was backward. That's why I read line that extraordinary advancements took place in this era. Some people have now challenged the very notion of word prehistory. Prehistory naam hi galat hai. The word that they give us now is, we should call it actually deep history. Deep history. A new name suggested recently, just a few decades ago. That is less value judgment making statement. It doesn't have that baggage of enlightenment thought of primitivism. It's more neutral. It rather gives adequate weightage to the idea that there were major advancements in this time. So, in backward versus progressive wala binary is actually not right. But anyway, if you go with this thing, you have the second part, that is the counter of prehistory would be historic period, history. अब history में क्या है भाई? History is the one which is the shortest span of time when we started to write. In this era, therefore, we have both archaeological material and literature available to us, and we can actually corroborate the two with each other to find out what is real history. In India, when do you think the script started? Harappan. Okay, but that is now not available to us. The one that we are using today, the one that has continued to exist since then till today, uski शुरुआत कहाँ पे? Mauryan is the one from where we have the evidence of script. and that Mauryan era ki script is used across India, east, west, north, south. So script must have started at least sometime before that, at some place, and spread everywhere, assuming 200 years before that. It's a random thumb ballpark. So around 500, 600 BC possibly is the time of the beginning of script. अब कहाँ से आई script? If you go to European historians, they would say Indians को अकल तो है नहीं. I will use the sentence again and again. In history is a great battleground, and one of the points of intervention of the West is that Indians can't invent the script. It is we who gave them. We matlab Western people from Persia. So the point of beginning of script is assumed to be northwest India, Gandhar region, and it is supported by one more thing. The oldest word for the script is called lipi. Lipi is called script. I hope everybody knows what script means. Anybody has any? What is the difference script and language? Correct. Do you have clarity, or should I explain? Okay. So which is this language? Language Hindi. Script Roman. Clear? Pakka clear hai abhi? If you go to Punjabi, Punjabi is one language written in three scripts in different parts. In parts of Delhi around, you will see Punjabi is written in Devanagari script. If you go to Punjab, it is Gurmukhi script. If you cross the border into Pakistan, Shahmukhi script. So Shahmukhi, Gurmukhi, Devanagari, three different scripts, one single language. Right? Do you get the difference? Script is the writing symbols. Language is the syntax, the meaning, the symbolism, the words. So if I write it like this, my Devanagari is not so good. So this is same language, but the script over top is Roman, and at the next level it is Nagari, Devanagari. Is it clear now? Script and language. So we're discussing script and not language. What is the name of India's oldest script that is available today? It's called Brahmi. Brahmi is the name of India's oldest script. All Indian scripts today, literally all, it could be Hindi ki ho, Devanagari or Tamilian script. All of them are derived from one mother script that is called Brahmi. In the languages, you may have Aryan languages, Dravidian languages. We have language families. We'll discuss them. But in the script, we have no families. We have only one single mother script of all of them. Okay? It evolved into regional scripts gradually over hundreds of years. So Brahmi was the old script, oldest script. So Brahmi is a name of the old Indian lipi. Lipi is the term which means script. किस लिपि में लिखा है, ठीक है. So history starts from the beginning of, समझो ना ऐसे. Do you think that humans started to write the moment they started to speak? We must have existed speaking for hundreds and thousands of years, and then at certain point we thought चलो लिखते हैं, right? So script would come later, language would emerge much earlier. So when did the script start in India is around 600 BCE. The oldest evidence of this word लिपि itself पहली बार मिलता है in Panini's writing. Panini was a great grammarian in the 5th century BCE, and he wrote a book called as, anybody? Ashtadhyayi. Possibly 5th century BCE. In that book, Ashtadhyayi, Panini is the name of a person, not a bread in this context. Okay? So we have this Ashtadhyayi book, a very great grammar book. It is also very significant. We have to discuss the book later on. But it is here we have the earliest evidence of the word lipi, and the moment a word exists, you should assume the concept exists. So therefore, we are presuming that sometime around that the concept of script emerged, 6th century BCE maybe. So that is the point when Vedic era is long gone. History begins. Once you have script, once you have the written records, then you have personal details, names, thoughts, emotions accessible to us. Now, let me ask you a question. Why do you think humans, for what purpose they would have started writing for the first time? What kind of records? Recording is correct, but we have to go a little bit further. Recording what? Hmm? Of what? Events. Acha, they want to tell stories maybe? Like, which is the oldest poetry in the world? Oldest story in the world? Datable story, written story. Which is the oldest literature in India? Gilgamesh. Correct. In the world, it is Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh की एक story है जिसे clay tablets मिले हैं मेसोपोटामिया में. Recently, a few decades ago, story of Gilgamesh from Mesopotamia, which is much older than Bible, but it has stories similar to Bible. तो even Bible की कहानी जो है पहली बार बाइबल में नहीं आती. It has its own prehistory. So this is the oldest recorded story available to us. But the point is that is not the first thing that humans recorded ever. Because writing poetry, writing stories was not the first urges. The writing started first for recording the accounts. If you are going to hunt, कितने जानवर मारे? 5, 10. हड्डियां कितनी है? कबाइल में लोग कितने? How many people you have in a community? How many animals you are hunting? What is the property you possess? Who is the owner of which pot? Who owned that clothing? Whatever. So recording for the purpose of accounting was the beginning of writing. It is much later that we imagined poetry and music and novel. बहुत much later. So the begin accountants rule the world even today. Remember that. But the point is that the writing started for accounting first, and then it came to the other things. So when I say that personal details, names, thoughts, emotions are accessible, that is also a partially correct statement, because from the earliest writing, those things are not available, thoughts and emotions, because those are not being recorded initially. Much later those things, and then dating of the events relatively more accurate because you have the dates, you have the dating system properly. These are the two phases like this. The main thing I want to point out is the intermediate era. The transformation from non-writing to writing did not take place suddenly overnight. It is not a very drastic change. There is a phase intermediate to that, that is called as proto-history. So proto-history is a period of transition from pre-history to history. Now let us understand what proto-history means and what it contains. Proto-history actually is a gap between history and prehistory. And there are different reasons for which a certain era could be called as proto-history. The most famous example is Harappa, right? Harappa is proto-history. Can anyone tell me why? Correct. So it had the script, but it is not deciphered. Now you see, these things are so interesting and so random. So you have long prehistory, then you have proto-history, जहाँ पे you have Harappa, and later you have history. So one reason why you call something as proto-history is that the script is present but not deciphered. The second reason could be we have literature available to us but it was not written down by the contemporary people. Like Vedas. Vedas were composed for over 1000 years, but they were memorized and passed on from generation to generation with the oral culture. There was strict injunction against writing it down. It is much later, hundreds of years later, that they were written down. So, because the Vedic people did not know writing, they had no need of writing. So, that kind of era also is called as proto-history. We have literature available to us today, but at that time it was not written down. So, we have the oral culture. Later written down. There is a third possibility also. That is also very interesting. For which I will give you one European example. You know Roman Empire. So Roman Empire was continuously battered by invasion of Germanic tribes from north. Germany से tribes बार बार हमला करते थे. These tribes were quite backward, quite barbaric, quite vicious, quite uncultured, uncouth, as the Romans would call them. And Romans were quite angry. They had put a lot of legions to the north to defend their territory from invading barbarians. And about them, Romans have written who is their head, who is their chief, what do they eat, what do they do, their observations of the culture. Romans have written everything. The tribes of Germanic region themselves have not written down anything. So the Germanic tribes don't know writing, they don't do writing, but some external observer for them, like the Romans, are writing about them in the contemporary era. So Romans are in historic age, but at the very same time, the Germanic tribes are in protohistoric age. Understood? So, in the same continent of Europe, you have historic and protohistoric ages simultaneously existing because it is a culture specific thing. Romans have graduated into historic age because they can write, but Germans have not. Romans are writing about them. So, instead of becoming prehistoric, they became protohistoric. The Germans, Germanic tribes. So, external records, external contemporary records. These are the three reasons because of which you have a term called as protohistory. So, in our map, what you will have, यहाँ पे you have Vedic era, again proto, our timeline. Now imagine one thing. अब तक हमने क्या सोचा है that protohistory is between his pre and history transition phase. Now imagine a future, distant future, maybe 10 years down the lane, maybe 50 years down the lane. Someday we will decipher Harappan script, no doubt. If not today, tomorrow. If not tomorrow, day after. It will happen. After it happens, we will have to reclassify Harappa from proto-history into history. Now see what is happening. Once you do that, you have prehistory, history, proto-history, and history. Is it linear? No. So this thought of human civilization grows linearly. We are better than yesterday, will become better tomorrow than today. The idea of progress is a very European idea. We don't think that way. Rarity also is not that way. We can go back in time also. And it is true at family level, it is not a guarantee that a son or daughter would earn more than father. The sampathic sthiti of family can go down in some generation also. It is not a linear progress every generation. Kya guarantee hai? It is also not a guarantee that from village my father came to city, so now we are urban. It might happen I go back to village one day. So from rural to urban, from poor to rich, from undeveloped to developed, from backward to progressive, from prehistory to history. ये कोई linear line थोड़ी है. So ये linear progress is a very wrong notion, and that can be proven very easily. Entire society can become historic, then go back to proto history, but not a writing. Now next question: not writing. Does it mean going backwards? No, that also is a wrong notion. If somebody knows how to write, doesn't mean they are more akalmand or better technologically. It may happen largely, but it's not a guarantee. So we have to be very careful of the value judgment associated with such notions of pre and proto and other things. UPSC will not be asking these things, but I wanted to open up this time because यहाँ पे I get a chance to talk about the idea of time very properly. History की progress is not guaranteed. है ना? You have to fight for it. Any doubt online? This is stuck for me. Okay, let us move on. Now we come to prehistory. We have to study prehistory today. In the prehistory, generally in the 19th century, there emerged a notion called as three age system. It's a very simple notion, very profound notion, and very simplistic notion also at the same time. So, 3S system is a method of dividing human prehistory into three periods based on materials used to make tools and weapons: Stone Age, Bronze Age, and Iron Age. This system was first developed by Christian Hugerson Thomason in the 1830s. Let us understand this for some time. The main point is that how do you divide the past? Because there is no written record, we don't have idea of dynasty, we don't have idea of timelines. How do we mention the progress? How do we measure the progress? The main progress can be measured in terms of the productivity. Productivity is direct outcome of your tools. So how the tools evolve become the main marker of studying human progress. Now this person, Thomason, was a person working in Denmark. Denmark at that time had a museum, National Museum of Denmark. And these people, Europeans in West Europe especially, had started to already create global empires. They captured parts of coastal Africa, parts of India, parts of America, etc. From wherever these Europeans went, they brought back some items of curiosities, antiquaries, and they just collected and dumped them in their museums. अब सब हमारा है. अभी recently you saw last month what happened. You know Sotheby's. Sotheby's is auction house, a globally famous auction house. नीलामी करते हैं वो पैसे कमाते हैं नीलामी करके. And people who want to sell any heritage item go to Sotheby and उसके तरह चार पांच और है. Sotheby's is very famous to auction and earn money, and Sotheby's keep the fees, a cut. So last month, 40-50 days ago, Sotheby, which is based in London, has Hong Kong campus or Hong Kong branch. Hong Kong branch ने announce किया, we are going to auction बुद्ध की अस्थियां, Buddha's relics. The moment I read the news, I was shocked. It's not some family heirloom. It's not some random monument or artifact that you can just auction for वो 1 लाख रुपए एक लाख रुपए दो 1 लाख रुपए तीन ऐसे नहीं. These are Buddha's body remains. There's some sacredness attached to it, some respect. Indian government has given them legal notice and stopped the auction for now. We don't know what will happen. We have to wait and watch. But the point is that the same thing Europeans have been doing for last 200 years. Denmark may they had ransacked lot of colonial places and even European their own land and collected all the tools and materials which they found very interesting in the museum. Nobody had studied them. This person got some free time. He was very good at pattern recognition. So he just collected those tools and bones and whatnot and arranged them, and he could see, acha, it seems that some tools are older than the others. It seems that some tools are primitive than the others. See, I remember this. This is the time of 1830s. This is 110, 120 years before the discovery or innovation of carbon dating. Carbon dating started to be used in 1940s and 50s. And couple of decades afterwards, it was calibrated. 70s mein. So carbon dating hai nahi. And you don't know how to date. You don't even know which is older than which. At that time, through his observations, he properly derived his own idea that some tools are older. So apne aap mein, this is a very great intellectual feat, no doubt. And he came with the idea that stone tools are older, the copper bronze tools are middle, iron is later. So point है कि the tools are evolving with time. Why do tools evolve with time? This is I want to ask you some probing, searching questions, because don't think of this thing as only mutual simple facts collection. Then history कोई मतलब नहीं है. You should ask why. People's need evolve. Correct. What kinds of need evolve? Hmm. Hmm. Correct. Hmm. 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 So with more experience. Okay. So her point is, with experience you create better tools. Well, this is not a guarantee, or this is only one part. It is true. The more experience you have, you make better notes for exam, also you write better answers, है ना? तो वो तो that is true, but for that experience to be accumulated and creative response to come, you need to have biological evolution also. The brain cranial capacity should increase. The hand should become more dexterous. So we have experience, you have biology, the thinking process, symbolic thinking. For you to look at a stone and imagine a shape inside the stone and then go and carve it, it takes a lot of imaginative thinking. It is a specific level of brain development. So you have biological evolution, that is one thing. And second thing, environment also is changing. In the Paleolithic era, it was very cold. Animals were different. In the later era, environment changed, animals change, plants change. So you need better tools, different tools, because that is the purpose of tool. So change in human biology and change in environment. Ultimately, the purpose of tool is to conquer the environment or to adapt to the environment. जैसे भी आपको. So humans are changing, nature is changing. In between, the tools will also change with time. Otherwise, we won't survive. So that is the evolution of tool. Clear? After he came with the stone, bronze, and iron, let me ask one more thing. Why do you think that we have seen history is not linear? It may go up and down also. So why do you think that across the world, the Bronze Age comes first and Iron Age comes later? Why, at least in some part of the world, in some culture, sometime, why it did not go in the other direction? Why not iron first, bronze later? Not necessarily. Rather, bronze comes from copper. It's a copper alloy, and copper access is actually not very easy. It's not in every state. Iron is available everywhere, at least in less quantities. No, it's mitti. स्मेल्ट करना है. You need to have a furnace. डालो मिट्टी उसके अंदर, निकलेगा. Melting point. Once you have a furnace or a bloomery, you start heating. You need to take the temperature gradually up. As temperature reaches certain point, whatever metal is there that melts at that point comes out. Then temperature goes higher, then that material comes out. Right? So the copper melting point is 500 degrees lesser than iron melting point. So when you start creating the furnace, automatically you will first reach 1000 degrees. Then you will reach 1500 degrees. And from 1000 to 1500 degrees, it takes a lot of effort and generations of efforts to have a better furnace, better oxygen supply, better bellows, better draw system. So iron can be extracted only and only when you have much better furnace. That would come after a point. At the lesser furnace, at smaller, at simple furnace, copper will immediately be extracted. So first it is available, first you use it. So it is a melting point. That is the main difference. Okay. Now you come to this second person, John Lubbock. John Lubbock was a British polymath, British person, and he then went on studying the Stone Age further. In the Stone Age, what he said is that it's a very long age. There is a very minute development over time. It's a very long journey, very slow and laborious journey. You have to crawl before you walk, and you have to walk before you run. So if the stone is crawling, bronze is walking, iron is running. Or if you are horse aficionado, so trot, canter, and gallop. Right? Trotting, cantering, galloping. But the earliest phase, Stone Age, was itself a very slow age. उसके अंदर भी तो जाके देखें हम क्या है. So start to study that. You know, एक thinker ने कहा है, what is the progress of knowledge? The progress of knowledge is the gradual and further refinement of terms. टर्मिनोलॉजी आपकी जितनी शार्प हो उतना नॉलेज ज़्यादा है. Initially, we had just prehistory. From prehistory, we came to stone, bronze, iron. We had sharper terminology. Now, from that, within stone, you have the Paleo and Neolithic. You have even further sharper terms coming up because your understanding is improving. So, ultimately, we have this kind of graph. Let us study that for some time. This blue thing is entire Stone Age. Then you have Copper Age or Chalcolithic Age and an Iron Age. The Stone Age started 5 lakh years ago, continued till 1000 BC almost. The years may vary based on the location. Here, the Stone Age is divided into two parts originally. You have the Old Stone Age, Paleo means old, and New Stone Age, matlab neo, old and new. Much later, somebody added a middle phase, so Middle Stone Age is Mesolithic. Even within that, you will see that Paleolithic, lithic matlab stone, is very long, very long. ये भी लाखों साल का है, 5 lakh to 10,000. So let us further subdivide it. So when they further subdivide, you get lower, middle, and upper. Now, why do you think it is called lower, middle, and upper? What is lower and upper here? Hmm? Progress is low. No. Lower valley to upper valley? No. No. These are not judgments. I'll tell you, it's very simple. You know, archaeology, you have to excavate the things. So you have, let us say you have a mound like this, a mound. You have to dig the mound. So in the mound, you have different stratas like this, stratas. As you start digging from the top, you make a trench, remove this material, you go deeper, you go older in past. So this stratigraphic analysis or study of stratas tells us that upper stratas are recent and lower stratas are older. So that is this. The deeper you go in excavation, backward you go in time, right? So when you look at this lower Paleolithic, it is the lowest, most level in excavation where such tools are found. Then middle and upper is uppermost level. Then on top of that, you have Mesolithic and Neolithic. Is this much clear? So don't confuse. Lower Purana hoga. Now, one more thing. In the lower Paleolithic, we'll see those things later. After Lithic era, you have, or after Stone Age, we have something called a Chalcolithic age. What is Chalcolithic? Copper. Then comes Iron Age. But you see the difference, a very interesting difference. You have Paleolithic, which has, after that we have Mesolithic, Neolithic. Then you have Chalco or Copper Lithic. Why Lithic? Why? It is not Stone Age. No, Stone Age is over. Copper Age is not part of Stone Age. Tools are made of copper only. Then why Lithic? No. Okay. Then that can be done even today. So when you come to Iron Age, why not call it Ferrolithic? Iron is ferrous, no? Ferrolithic. If that is the logic that stone is being used along with copper in a composite kind of tool, then that might have happened in the iron era also, iron age also. Why not ferrolithic age? It's a good viewpoint, but not applicable here. Perfect. Correct. So copper is softer. Copper doesn't solve all the requirements, doesn't fulfill all the requirements, doesn't replace stone completely. Iron is harder. It has got more strength. So only when iron could come, we could become industrial. We could replace. We don't need stone tool anymore. कॉपर इज सॉफ्ट. सो कॉपर के साथ साथ स्टोन इस्तेमाल करने की जरूरत पड़ती रही हमेशा. कॉपर वॉज इनएडिक्वेट टू रिप्लेस स्टोन. ठीक है. Bronze is, yes, bronze is actually the sub category of copper age. In that, uh, different people created different types of copper alloys with tin, with arsenic, with nickel, etc. When some people created bronze, bronze was harder, bronze was better. Making preparing bronze was very difficult, but at least for some time it becomes so important that it is not that it replaced stone. No, stone continued. Harappa is bronze age. It has a lot of stone tools also, but bronze is so iconic that we get a name bronze age. Yes. Okay. Now this kind of evolution from stone to calco to iron is also problematic. For multi three age system is easy to remember, but this is not a very logical system. Firstly, it lacks global applicability. Not everywhere such transformation takes place. It does not take place, for example, in Australia, in Pacific Islands, in parts of America. We can see the change going directly from stone to iron also. You don't have to have copper in between. Secondly, what it tells us is technology determines everything. Our exclusive latching on to only tool technology as the base identity of entire culture of the era. That culture of the stone age is defined by stone tools. Is it so? It need not be so. But we gave of 10 15 other parameters of judging the culture, we gave one parameter the premium point कि हाँ tools से हम सब define कर देंगे. Is it that? It's not. Stone tools don't determine everything. What are tools? Don't, tools are very important. They don't determine. And then तीसरी बात ये transformation जो है, it may not be very watertight. There would be many communities which would be overlapping. It doesn't happen in the same dates everywhere in the world. Even today, you have Banjaras. They don't settle down. So can you say that they are still in the pre-Neolithic era? They are not even agrarian people yet. ऐसे नहीं होता ना. So we have those. This comes with lot of value judgments, and most importantly, it neglects other material. Other material. You know, in the stone tools era, जब हम stone age शब्द use करते हैं, it gives us a feeling that stone was the most important tool material. Is it so? Why is it not so? Yes. So what other tools they were using? Bronze in stone age कैसे bronze आएगा? Wooden tools. Wood is more accessible, easier to work with. It would solve half the problems. You don't have to go to stone को तराश के बनाना कितनी मेहनत का काम है. When you have no other tool, stone से stone आपको घिस घिस के करना है. It takes lots of efforts. Wood is easily available, accessible. It's much better. What has happened is that the wood has not survived today. It's a perishable material. So what we have is what has survived. So we have survivor bias. The proportion of stone tools today in entire cultural assembly मे बी वेरी हाई, क्योंकि बाकी सारा खत्म ही हो गया. बट इफ यू गो बैक इन टाइम, there will be 10 other things which has perished, which have perished now. But in that complete picture, stone would be one of the things, not the main thing. And there is a lot of possibility that wooden tools were more often used than stone tools. Stone tools are used not as directly, they are used to create wooden tools. And wooden tools are used in normal life. Stone is a tool maker's tool. And how do we know that it's not just a guesswork? You have to go for micro wear and tear analysis with the help of different kinds of scopes, telescopes, like SEM, scanning electron microscope. You look at the profile of the surface. The tear mark, the wear mark tell us that this is not using for being used every day. It is used once in a while to do some prepare some other tool. So some people have recommended other name. They said कि we should go by the tool which is most prevalent, लकड़ी का tool. लकड़ी का नाम दो उसको. Paleozylic age. Zylic मतलब लकड़ी का. So other than Paleolithic, they say use Paleozylic age. Because when the moment you use word zylic, it means it is wood. But again, we don't have any evidence of that directly. I will use one phrase again and again in our lectures in the coming time. वो है absence of proof is not proof of absence. This is a very important term in history to understand how the sources work. Absence of proof is not proof of absence. So, if I use a more logical or more scientific term, to prove with anything, we need to have positive evidence, not negative evidence, to disprove anything. Negative evidence can't disprove anything, positive evidence can prove anything. Absence of proof is not proof of absence. Okay? Anyway, we'll come back to that later again and again. Let us now move further. अभी तक ठीक चल रहा है? Do you find this as very slow? Should I increase the speed? नहीं, this speed is fine. Initial इसमें थोड़ा सा धीरे धीरे चलना पड़ता है. Let us move on then. Any doubt online? Formatting issue in the handout. Content is out in the right margin. Is it so? No, content is right. I think you printed everything in vertical layout. I think in some pages there are horizontal layout also. ठीक है, ललित एक बार चेक कर लेना पीडीएफ में. Now we come to each era one by one. Paleo, Meso and Neo. अपनी गाड़ी अब थोड़ी फास्ट चलेगी, अब थोड़ा काम आसान है. As I said, the tools are evolving for hunting or collection or gathering or something. So animals and flora and fauna are also the outcome of the climate. So climate is the starting point for us. Paleolithic age, which was started 5 lakh years ago, was actually during a geological time that is called as Pleistocene. It's a great ice age. What is time in the case of geology? That will be taught to you in geography very well. But it's the era in which mountains are getting formed, oceans are getting formed. So it's much पृथ्वी का अपनी उम्र होती है. In that geological time scale, human time scale is very small. So one stage of geological time scale is one of the latest eras is Pleistocene, when we had the last ice age. Ice age मतलब जब we had woolly mammoth वगैरह वो सब ice age. So this ice age peaked. Coldest of the ice age was around 21,000 years ago, but it had started 5 lakh years ago. So ice age. Now in the ice age, what do you have? You have extremely cold temperature. So here you have Pleistocene, lower, middle and upper. Extremely cold temperature and earth is full of ice caps. The oceans are उसके level नीचे है, पानी बहुत नीचे है, because most of it is stored in the ice. So continents are easily walkable from one place to other place. They're connected to each other much better. Water table is much lower. but temperature is cold. It is in this point of time humans are evolving. Humans are evolving. Now, this human evolution is not in our syllabus. If you take anthropology, maybe, or biology, maybe. In history, this part is not required at all. But thoda reference आ जाता है. So we know that everybody came from Africa. हम सब मूलतः African है. In Central Africa, the primates began walking for the first time. It is in this time they evolved into Homo habilis and then Homo erectus. This evolution took place in Africa. Homo erectus is the one who can stand upright on both the legs. Both hands are totally free. He can walk. The moment hands are free, you can collect the food, you can protect yourself. At the same time, this Homo erectus started to live in small communities where they could protect each other, help each other, interdependent communities create हो जाते हैं. And they are flexible enough to modify the behavior as per new terrain, new climate, new environment. So wherever they would migrate with the hands, with the community and inherent flexibility, they can adapt themselves to new place. So they start coming out of Africa. And because the land is connected, they walk everywhere. They also come to India. In India, when they come, they settle, we have one evidence. This evidence comes from Madhya Pradesh at a place called Hathnora. This site is important, Hathnora. At Hathnora in Madhya Pradesh, we found one skull. This is the oldest known skull in Indian history. I have a photo here. Narmada skull, discovered in 1982 by a person called Arun Sonakia. Arun Sonakia. This skull is the oldest skull. It perhaps belongs to Homo erectus. Only based on this skull, how much can you tell? But it seems that it was possibly Homo erectus. So how did this erectus come to India? Maybe walking from Africa. And if there are small water bodies using some shallow water को cross करने के लिए, you need some rafts, some wooden rafts. Maybe that were also used. Who knows? They came to Africa. They came to India. Now the point is that once it comes to India, and across it goes to China also, everywhere it goes, it vanishes. It vanishes. Once it comes to India, populates India, at some point of time it vanished. So the evolution from erectus to Homo sapien has happened, but not in India. So the first out of Africa, India was occupied, people vanished. What happened to them? Why did they die? We have no idea. By the time it was happening in Africa, at the same time, meanwhile, further evolution was taking place. Then there was one more attempt to come out, second out of Africa, but it was a failure. Wherever they went, they died. So that species also gone. Again, by the time Africa में evolution हो रही है, then it reaches Homo sapien level. And around 70,000 years BCE, 70,000 or 72,000 साल पहले, you have second major out of Africa event. The Homo sapiens now come out of Africa and they populate entire world. I am not going into the details of what is Homo narbadanesis, what is this Denisovan, and what is the Neanderthal, and yes, we don't need all those things. That is in biology. But only major point is that we have multiple out of Africa events. In every event, some humans came to India, but they did not last. Ultimately, Homo sapiens came and they lasted. So that Homo sapien ka evolution and migration into India has occurred in the upper Paleolithic. ठीक है. So Paleolithic era is a very long, 5 लाख साल, बहुत बड़े होते, बहुत बड़े होते, 5 लाख, 5 lakh years. So this is the biological evolution taking place. What was the food base of the people at that point of time? This is little interesting. When this Homo erectus came to India for the first time, and Homo sapien also rather, India had its own horses, wild horses. You know, India did have our own wild horse species. It went extinct, say 15,000, 30,000 years ago. But when Homo sapiens had come, at that time we had 2 species of wild elephants also. They have not lasted. We have Oroch, Auroch. This is the previous generation of the species of cattle that we have in India, humped cattle. उनका औरख था पहले. These animals, wild animals, had populated India. At that time, the sapiens came, and then sapiens were primarily engaged in hunting and gathering. Hunting and gathering. The big woolly animals confined to narrow tropical subtropical zone. So, because of the coldness and because of the food base, the the habitable zone of humans was very restricted. It couldn't go anywhere randomly कि मैं आज यहाँ बसूँ वहाँ बसूँ नहीं चलेगा. Wherever you have climate and food base, only there you can survive. So it was very limited. Now I have to make some comments on this about food base. There are some again judgmental comments that the kind of efficiency of the human society at that time was very less. They were inefficient people. They could not exploit natural resources properly because their tools, social organization, their thinking capacity, their ability was very less. They are undeveloped primitive people. Judgment hai. But now we know it is not true. Through some kind of ethnographic analysis. Ethnography मतलब जो आज के tribes है उनको पढ़ के we can derive some kind of inferences. We know that such communities actually have more capacity and more ability to exploit the natural resources, but they don't do so because they don't want to harm nature. So their inefficiency is not inefficiency, their inefficiency is wise choice not to exploit beyond the point, beyond requirement. So we should not be judgmental about these people as backward. That is one. The second point I want to discuss is look at what there is a phrase that we use, very interesting. Hunting and gathering. Hunting and gathering. There is a judgment here also. जैसे हम कहते हैं इंडिया चाइना वॉर. Is it a right statement to use? No. It is China India war. Why? China won the war. इंडिया पाकिस्तान वॉर होता है, पाकिस्तान इंडिया वॉर कभी नहीं होता. The first term is apparently supposed to be more important than second term. There is some hierarchy involved, some choice involved. So when you use hunting and gathering, it means hunting was more important than gathering. Perhaps on what basis? Perhaps calorie. Hunting से ज़्यादा आते थे. You kill one animal, you get lot of calories. Gathering नहीं important है. But now we know it is actually reverse. Gathering was more prominent. Collecting berries and fruits, etc., is easy to do. It supplied more calories. It actually satisfied most of the demand. Hunting करना जानलेवा था. It was life threatening. If you want to go on hunt, you collect as people, 5, 10, 20 लोग आए. Then you better your tools. You go on some expedition. You kill some animal. Maybe you will be killed. Who knows? And by the time you come back, you may get animal. You may not get animal. It is risky. So it was not done very often. And once you kill a big animal, then for 1 week, 10 days, 15 days, बस बैठ के खाते रहो. But gathering will happen every single day. It is relatively risk free. So technically, by the frequency, by the amount of calories, by the extent of dependency, it should have been called gathering hunting and not hunting gathering. But what can we do? Hai so hai. Because the terms are decided by Europeans in 19th century, we continue them without changing. Prehistory, no deep history. So that is the second comment. The first was efficiency of exploitation of resources. Second comment was should it be called hunting or hunting gathering or gathering hunting. तीसरी बात, इट इज ऑल. अब देखो पैट्रियार्की कैसे काम करती है. पैट्रियार्की, the 19th century and 20th century archaeologists were mostly men. They imagined a scenario that males go for hunting, females go for gathering, because of multiple reasons. One is that physical strength, and there are many other reasons also. We don't need to go there, but that was their theory, that males go for hunting. It's like 20th century, या फिर 20 तो बहुत नॉर्मल होना शुरू हो गया है. गो इन द medieval time, male go outside and work, female stay at home, domestic norms. Same thing here. Now how do you prove or disprove this theory that males won't go for hunting, female go for gathering? Can you prove or disprove this? We can't do both, but we are open to question. Recently, just a decade ago, somewhere in Kenya, we have found a burial of a female skeleton with hunting tools. Now we have, when you bury some dead, you bury the dead with grave goods. The grave goods are the goods which are loved or possessed or owned by that person. इसको आप दफन कर रहे हो. So if the grave goods are hunting tools, trap वगैरह है उसमें, in a female burial, it means she was a hunter. Now, once that was discovered, we have done more research in Africa and America, etc., to find out women were also hunters. We should not go back in the past in prehistory and impose our gender labor division. ऐसे नहीं है. Women were also hunter. अब now we can imagine, okay, males were also gatherers. Who knows? हो सकता है. So this is how you have to start looking into things. एक और चीज है, hunting is non-veg, gathering is veg. Today, these are very sensitive issues in India, veg food and non-veg food. What do you think about prehistory? Humans had both the foods. And it is through the prehistory we are evolving from erectus, habilis, sapien, etc. Look at our teeth structure. We have सामने के चार जो है और ये वाले दांत वेज खाने के लिए बने हुए. And we have canine teeth also. We have 4 canine teeth. They are to eat non-veg. So biologically humans are evolved to eat both veg and non-veg. Whatever choice we take today is a cultural choice, not a natural choice. One step ahead, go back to Harari. In Harari's Sapiens, he has said, what would be the first non-veg item that humans must have eaten? He has his own thought experiment. Humans are bodily weak. You can't go on shikar, major shikar. Maybe some great hunting animal kills some normal cattle or deer or something. Maybe cheetah eats a deer. Cheetah finishes deer, goes away. Then humans would go there घबरा के as a scavenger. कुछ बचा है क्या? At that time, you find bones. So you break the bones. What do you find? Bone marrow. So as per Harari, possibly the first non-veg humans had was more of bone marrow rather than flesh. And once the humans started to have the capacity to hunt, then we went for hunting ourselves and then the other flesh, etc. came. But initially, it could be scavenging more than hunting. And if you go for scavenging, bone marrow would be the natural choice. Again, these are all thought experiments for us. Let us go ahead. ऐसे कहानी बहुत चलती रहेगी. Come to the tools and technology. ठीक है. See, what I want to do is that when you read this book in these things in books like NCERT, these things become very boring. These are not merely facts. These are lively things. You should start looking through the terms. Imagine things, then you understand ki it makes sense. And once you understand these lively stories behind it, you don't have to memorize it. It automatically gets memorized because it's all. My main task is to convert the facts into logic for you. That is the main task. Once that happens, history is most enjoyable and easiest of the subjects. Come to tools and technology. Now, what kind of material was used to prepare the stone tools? Tools were generally, assuming stone tools. Inder Mohan is asking, sir, a few study of history we are doing today is from burials. What is going to happen to the history of a community? Those who don't follow burial practice even now. Inder, it's a very good question. Those who don't follow burial. What do you think happened to those who did not follow burial past then also? It's highly possible. Again, survivor bias. There would have been communities which did not go for burial at all. कुछ नहीं बचा, क्या करोगे? In Harappa we discuss that. We'll discuss it at the time of Harappa, burial versus cremation. ठीक है, अभी इसको hold करते हैं. Because in prehistory we have no burials. Burials begin. When do burials begin? When you have belief in afterlife. If you don't have no, if you have no notion of afterlife, you don't need burials. And when do this notion of afterlife begins? When you can imagine abstract things. When you can imagine abstract things, when the brain capacity is there. That kind of evolution, symbolic thinking, abstract imagination, enough cranial capacity. All of that happens at the end of the Paleolithic, in primarily in the Mesolithic. तो पैलियो के खत्म होते होते इन अपर पैलियो एंड मिसो यू हैव सम मूवमेंट टुवर्ड इमेजिनिंग गॉड्स, इमेजिनिंग आफ्टर लाइफ, ये तब शुरू होगा. भाई अभी नहीं, इन मिडल एंड लोअर पैलियोलिथिक दिस थिंग्स डोंट एग्जिस्ट, एटलीस्ट वी डोंट नो दैट दे एग्जिस्ट. So coming to tool and technology, generally used quartz metamorphic rock, it is hard, crystalline and brittle. From it they made core tools like choppers, cleavers and hand axe. In India there is a profusion of stone tools, especially in the period of 8 lakh to 2 lakh years before present. Now first of all understand rocks. Rocks are of variety of types. You will study, we have a separate chapter on rocks in geography. We will study rock types, how the rocks are formed, etc. So I don't go there, but sometimes what happens, different kind of material come together under extreme pressure and temperature and coalesce into rock, transform into rock. Such transformed material into rock under pressure temperature is called metamorphic rock. It's a type of rock, metamorphic rock. So quartz is a type of metamorphic rock that is found in India and everywhere. That kind of tools, that kind of material are generally used. अब ये जो होता है, it is formed under extreme pressure it and extreme heat. Generally it is hard, it is also crystalline, it has crystal lines. So what happens is that it is easy to break, and once you break it, it breaks along the crystalline line. It will break, so it will break very in a good shape, the shape you want it. So I have a photo here on the next page, that you have the main tool like this. This is the tool of the Paleolithic era. What have you done? You just removed this part and this part. जो बचा वो tool है. And how will you use it? With the hand axe. So axe has a lever arm. Lever arm was not invented back then. So you just hold the stone in your hand and use it for hard hitting. This is hand axe. That's all. So when you go and see such kind of stone lying here and there, we don't even notice कि भाई ये कोई बड़ी चीज है. Even to recognize that this is something historic in or prehistoric in nature, we need to have that lens and education or training for that. We don't. So when I saw such photos, ये क्या है ये? पत्थर. And it requires different kind of thinking. But anyway, such kind of core tools. Now look at some important sites. So these tools use generally brute force, and we have found them for many places. For the first time, we found them in South India near Chennai. The place called Pallavaram. Pallavaram. It was discovered in the midst of 19th century by a person called Robert Bruce Foote. He was in the service of British government, Robert Bruce Foote, and he was very curious about this thing because till 1860s, you remember, Harappa kab mili hai? 1920. It is 1860. Harappa is not known. Vedas are known. They are translated. And that was the oldest, most known point to British and Indians in 1860. What is the point of beginning of Indian history? For them, Vedic India. And Vedas already possess so much evolved philosophy and literature, etc. They are confused. How come suddenly India has nothing and suddenly India has Vedas? So in the pre-Vedic era, Indians kahan the? Kaun the? And how come suddenly they have such evolved literature? It was a big puzzle in the 19th century. And suddenly Robert Bruce Foote found this kind of tools in South India. He found in Pallavaram a hand axe, and then his son found another one at Atirampakkam, again near Pallavaram, only near Chennai. Once these tools were found, it was known, Acha, Indian subcontinent was populated by prehistoric man. Ab puzzle naya create, a new puzzle was created, interestingly. Now what we have, evolved Vedic literature, and in the hoary past we have Paleolithic tools. बीच में क्या है? Dark hole. So from 1860s till 1920s, 50 साल तक history was, India has a dark hole in history. From prehistoric man, suddenly we have Vedas. So, so these are interesting things. But anyway, so Atirampakkam and Pallavaram are very important places where we have for the first time discovered that Indian subcontinent was populated by prehistoric man. And we have many such sites. Isampur is another site in Karnataka. Isampur is very famous because it has limestone hills, and here we have more than 200 sites in the same. It's a cluster of sites where you have factory of tools. This is another important point. Now, SNEK, everybody made his or her own tools. Not every place had access to such good quality stones. So there were certain places where there were stone quarries. Some people specialized perhaps in that, and they would prepare tools and then they migrate or hand over or transfer. So this Isampur site in Hungasi Valley or Hunasagi Valley in Karnataka, here you will see that we have 200 odd sites, which is a cluster of limestone hills, jahan pe there is stone tool making industry, and then it is transferred everywhere. And this is not the only place; there are such places elsewhere also. If you go to Andhra Pradesh, here you have Jwalapuram site. Though this site is another extremely interesting site. Jwalapuram. Naam hai Jwalapuram. Now let me ask you one question. When you look at a stone tool, if I ask you how old the stone tool is, can you tell me? There is no carbon dating possible. It doesn't contain any organic material. Stone hai, right? If you go for any thermoluminescence, argon, vagara, vagara, it is not heated. Maybe in case of pottery, where you use some kind of furnace, you can use those other methods. It is also not heated. There is no established method. You can do one thing. You can know the age of the stone, but age of stone is different from age of stone tool. Stone may be hundreds and thousands and millions of years older than that. Uski age mein find out kar sakta hu. But what do I do with that? I don't want that age, no. I want the age of stone tool. There is no possibility. We can't make that out. You have to depend on nearby things. Yes. Yes, yes, that we can do stylistic, but no, yes, you are good, correct. So what I want to ask specifically, yes, correct, correct, correct. So you have lower era, you have middle era, you have upper era, your core tools, but lower era also goes for lakhs of years. How do I know a tool is here versus tool is here? That is not possible to know. I know ki core versus flake, that I know, but within core I have huge time span. How can I know when there is no stylistic evolution of tools? Got my question? So there is one possibility, and that is Jwalapur. Now there is a volcano in Southeast Asia called Toba. Exactly 74,000 years ago, that volcano erupted. It was such a massive eruption. It sent so much ash in the sky that ash got deposited in entire Asia. For some weeks and days and months, maybe sky was black. And that is a time marker. In Jwalapuram, you start digging, you find some stone tools, then there is a clear layer of that ash which came from Toba. And then if you dig further, beneath that layer, a few centimeter downwards, you again find some more stone tools. So we know for sure that in India, some of the tools are older than the Toba explosion. Do you get my point? So this site is very important. 74,000 years se pehle bhi tha. So that is one important, interesting time marker. Yes, around. Not humans. You have this Homo sapiens sapiens. First they came in Erectus, that is 5 lakh years ago. Then you have they evolving into archaic sapiens and sapiens. So when you have core tools, who's making core tools? Not these final humans, the earlier humans. Erectus, they are making core tools. Got it? Then from the lower era, you go to middle era, middle Paleolithic era. It is here you have flake tools. What is flake tools? It is very simple. Again, go to the picture. When you have this as a core, What you used to throw earlier has not required. That then became a tool as required. So you have these things. This is flake, जो कि इसका टुकड़ा आया है निकल के. Now you think that this actually is a better tool. It can point, scrapers, borers, etc. So you started from core, shifted to flake. And in the later era, in the upper Paleolithic era, we thought इसके टुकड़े और बन जाए, smaller pieces. Those are blades, and we'll use these blades as our tools. So from lower Paleolithic to middle Paleolithic to upper Paleolithic, for this evolution, कि भाई what I am throwing away initially is something that is more useful as a tool. इतनी सी अकल आने के लिए 5 लाख साल लगे, 5 lakh years of us. Why? Brain capacity still evolving. It is not merely experience, it is biological evolution also. Okay. So you go from core to flake to blade with sharp edges, etc. So this kind of tool making, where now you are graduating to blade tools, it is sometimes called as cognitive revolution, because to understand that kind of thinking you have to have such kind of development. Now इसमें दो तीन चीजें हैं. Why it is cognitive revolution? As I said initially, you have to first look at a larger stone and imagine a shape of a small piece inside it which you want to carve out. That is abstract thinking. Not only that, one stage ahead, once you do it, you want to teach it to next generation. You have to pass on the knowledge and skill to next generation. कैसे हथियार बनते हैं? It is even more difficult. So it took thousands and lakhs of years. Now, while all of this was going on, humans are living where? They are living a very nomadic life. They don't stay at one place, they move from place to place for hunting and gathering, and they don't create the houses. They actually live in the natural dwellings. Natural dwelling matlab नैसर्गिक गुफाएं, caves, not man-made but natural caves. I think on the last page I have given one photo also. Last page of the PDF. है ना? So natural caves in Nandyal district, Andhra Pradesh, near Jwalapuram. One of very large cave network. It's a completely natural cave. In natural cave or rock shelters. Or Bhimbetka is another one, very famous one, Bhimbetka in Madhya Pradesh. Right? So these are the places where humans used to live earlier. So if you imagine that paleo person used to live on the banks of rivers, not at all. Most probably there were no rivers. It was ice age. कुछ शायद कोई stream होगी तो होगी. Rivers and lakes did not exist much. It was ice age. ठीक है? So natural dwellings. So they occupied all the subcontinent except the alluvium plains. Come to Ganga Valley, for example, Ganga River. Now, Ganga River, let us assume there was a river. It was flowing. It was alluvium plain. It would have some forest, some grass from forest only, some animals. So food bhi hai, water bhi hai, jungle bhi hai. Still, you have not found a single exception hai. But apart from that one single exception, largely no tools in Ganga Valley. No habitation site in Ganga Valley. This is जहाँ पे in the future we have the urbanization which becomes the very identity of emergence of Indian civilization, Ganga Valley, Indus Valley, etc. Those are the places exactly which are avoided from where humans lived apart, far away. Why? Okay, that's not the main reason. Yes. No. 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 Natural. Correct. रहेंगे कहाँ? Need to have caves to live in. So one point is lack of natural dwelling, and second point is yes, same shelter dwellings एक ही बात है. The second point is you need tools, and one of the dependencies is stone. In alluvium plain you don't have stones. Even today, if you want to build a building in Delhi, you don't find a stone. You have to import it from Rajasthan, Aravallis के middle से. Alluvium plains don't have stones. पत्थर कैसे नहीं, आप हथियार नहीं बनोगे. So you have no place to live, no place to have tools. You can't live. It is impossible to survive in such a region. ठीक है. So they used to live in little bit upland on the edges of forest somewhere जहाँ पे बाकी चीजें हो. So the Shivalik, Vindhya forested zones of Chota Nagpur, Bhima river, Kadappa basins, etc. of south, they became the areas of dwelling. Exception एक है, in Uttar Pradesh, in Jalaun district we have Kalpi. In Kalpi, Kalpi is famous for Battle of Kalpi, Rani Jhansi. The same Battle of Kalpi, in Jalaun district, where you have found some Paleolithic tools. The exception of why they are there, we don't know. One exception. ठीक? Yes. Then you come to the social aspects of Paleolithic era. Here you will see that human life is largely solitary. We don't have youth society, we don't have tribes, you don't have, so you have small independent interdependent communities. We call them as band society. So let me tell you this also, in social organization, as we go from paleo to meso to neo, social also or structure also evolves. In paleo it is called band society, in meso it is called tribe, and in neo it becomes chiefdom. So gradually the society is becoming more and more complex. So you don't have large communities, you are in isolation, 5 log 20 log 50 log, that's all, and you don't get to see other humans for entire life or generations. So bands, it is in this era we have the discovery of fire. Now fire was discovered around 15 lakh years ago somewhere, and the oldest evidence that we have now, first control of fire, is from China, the Peking man, that is from 5 lakh years ago. So fire must have been discovered accidentally, but then controlled very intentionally, consciously. And fire was, discovery of fire was a momentous change, extremely important. Can you guess why? Warmth in the winter or in the cold area, you have warmth, yes. Animals, yes. So safety and protection, you have fire, and cooking. These are three major things. चौथी चाहे तो नाइट विजन ऐड करो तो, है ना. So night vision, protection, then warmth, and cooking food. So chances of survival increased, but cooking food is more important, rather the most important of all these. Why? But we were eating meat even before that. It made digestion easy. So what? No. Digestion became easy. Matlab, for digestion you need less calories. So the amount of energy your body burns on digestion is less. So you have excess energy available. That will go to the brain. So brain can increase faster. Intestine became smaller and brain became larger. Human beings are the only animals on this earth whose brains consume around 20 to 30% of the calories that they eat. And you can afford to give 20-30% to brain, because to digest you are eating the cooked food. So because of the fire, biological evolution could happen faster. दिमाग बढ़, मतलब brain capacity increased. ठीक है, it is very important. And then, so that you become wise man, sapien जो बने हैं. It is at that time, at the end of this phase, you have speech and language also evolving, upper paleo era. Now when you have speech and language, what does it mean? You have the capacity to think in symbolic way, you have imagination, you have curiosity, you can think symbolically, and therefore you start telling stories. At the moment you start telling stories, you create communities. So social organization could expand. You may have God, you may have gossip, could be anything. Then they had plenty of leisure time to sleep, chat, play games, and relax. This is important thing. For on an average, based on ethnographic studies, for how many hours humans used to work every week? आज के दिन में if you go to industry, कितने घंटे का वीक होता है? 50 hours, 60 hours week. If you go to Narayan Murthy's company, 70 hours week, 80 hours week, 100 hours week. If you are preparing UPSC, 1000 hours week. But end of Paleolithic era क्या था? Average 20 hours, 15 to 20 hours, which include both gathering and hunting. Beyond 20 hours, you have zero work to do. बस बतियाना है. And now you have language also. है ना? Literally there were safety concerns, no doubt. There was not much work. खाली बैठे. And that allowed us to grow and evolve. I will come back to this 20 hours equation when I come to Neolithic, and then I will do a lot of equations. तब देखना आप. Then earliest Bhimbetka paintings might belong to upper Paleolithic era. So you have beginning. So now you have beginning. Might actually वो is भी चाहिए कर सकते. Now it is proven. The beginning of the painting over here at the end of this era, there is in Bhimbetka a cave called Auditorium Cave. Why auditorium? Because on the walls of the cave you have indentations. You have the hit marks. You take a stone and you keep hitting. So those cupules or hit marks are there. Matlab people are creating some sort of music. So auditorium cave. So they have time, no? So you also have, now this is very speculative, at a place called Baghor in Madhya Pradesh, we have found one stone. And the stone has some kind of carving. This is the photo of that stone. This photo. In Baghor in Madhya Pradesh. This photo, some historians are saying now, is the object of worship. Object of worship. ये कोई सिंबल है, इसकी पूजा होती थी. मतलब ये रिचुअल ऑब्जेक्ट है. If it is true, it is the oldest murti of God. And some historians have gone further and they have imagined that the beginning generally occurs in fertility cult, some kind of fertility, some kind of. So they have started to call it Shakti. I don't know whether we should use word Shakti or not, but maybe some object of worship might have started because you have language, you have imagination, so you have the capacity to imagine religion now. इसकी शुरुआत है. At the end of it, at the very end of the upper Paleo, when you are entering Mesolithic era. So you have just a faint beginning of all these things. ठीक है. Have you seen that movie? I had seen that many years ago, called The Gods Must Be Crazy. Have you heard the name Gods Must Be Crazy? It's a fantastic movie. You should read it, see that movie. It's some African movie. And in that movie, they have taken all tribal actors, original African tribal actors. And theme क्या है? There is one tribe in somewhere in Central Africa, which has so far not come in contact with outside world. They are living like they were for thousands and thousands of years. And one day, from the sky, one helicopter is going or flight is going, and they happen to drop a bottle of Coca-Cola. कोक की बोतल आसमान से गिरती है इनके ट्राइबल एरिया में. They have never seen anything like this. They have no idea what glass is. They don't know what bottle is. They only could see it fell from the sky. ते भगवान ने दिया है. And if it is given by gods, it must be given back to the gods. Where do gods reside? At the end of the world. So one person decides, I will keep running till the end of the land. I will reach the place where the world ends and God's area starts. I will return the bottle to that God. गलती से यहाँ भूल गए God. So he keeps entire stories like this. In the end, he comes to the end जहाँ पे आगे समंदर होता है. He throws it. But this is they have imagination to imagine God. But here comes a twist in real life. वो actor जो था, he became superstar in the entire world after the movie became popular. It may have gone Oscar, सब कुछ हुआ था, and he earned huge amount of millions of dollars And he actually was a tribal. He said, what is money? We don't need money. Money makes no sense in my culture. सारा पैसा फेंक दिया, वापस जाके ट्राइबल बन गया. This has happened really अभी 30-40 साल पहले. So this is another level कि they can imagine gods, but their social organization does not need the concept of money. So he just relinquished all that millions of dollars and went to the tribe and lived thereafter. So they can imagine some things, they can't imagine other things. It's evolving. That's my point. But anyway, come back. Now from the Paleolithic era, we enter the Mesolithic era. In the Mesolithic era, things start changing. Why? Because you have change in the geology. We have some question. Won't smaller tools make it hard to hold them? Yes, Night King will discuss that. Tools are not that small yet. But in the Mesolithic era, we'll have small tools. We call them microlith. We'll discuss that right now. How were the water requirements fulfilled? अरे वेदांत उतना पानी तो मिल जाता है ना. You don't reside on the bank of the river. पानी तो है. Vishal is asking, can it be the case that evidences are not found in India because not much importance given to paleontology and Westerners had racist philosophy against Indians that we were savage? Vishal, second half is correct. Westerns, especially 19th century Europeans, were generally racist. That is very true. They considered us savage and backward. That is also true. We have that. Anybody has read Rudyard Kipling? You know Kipling, jante ho? Rudyard Kipling. So he was such a racist person. Should abhor him as symbol of empire. I am not joking. Despite his great, I have read his किताब मैंने किम पढ़ी है. Kim is a very good book about great game. But Kipling साहब की कविता है. In that poem, he says that, hey British children and hey British parents, we have a duty towards the God and towards humans. We have control over this land of Indians who are half devil, half child, and therefore we have to sacrifice our life, leave our aisho aram at our home, come across to such a country where you have malaria and whatnot, and serve these people as the rulers, ताकि इनका बेहतरी हो. तो ब्रिटिश पेरेंट्स बच्चों का त्याग करो, उनको आईसीएस बनाओ, let them come to India as rule because these people deserve our service. That is the story of civilizing burden. Civilizing क्या होता है? Mission. Anyway, come back to this. So Mesolithic era. Here the temperature starts getting warmer. So from Pleistocene we enter Holocene. The ice age starts to end. Once you have warm climate, things start to change accordingly. क्या क्या होता है? पहली बात तो you will see that the ice caps start melting. The permafrost starts melting. You have there increase in monsoon. In the Holocene era, monsoon starts increasing. In the later era, उसके बाद वाला, that is this Holocene era, at the later part, monsoon का rain waterfall साल में double हो जाता है. So you have more wetter region. Then the rivers start coming up, lakes start coming up, the grassland and meadows start coming up. As water recedes, more land is exposed for all these things. So the primary productivity of ecology goes up. We have such kinds of forest, etc. And animals also therefore evolve with time. So it is in this era we also adapt. Food base. As you have grassland and meadows, you have different type of, and the era of mammoths is gone. You have smaller animals who run faster, like deer and hare. Hiran ka jamana hai. So here you have cattles, antlers, deers, etc. and no more mammoths and large woolly animals. At the same time, because the climate is more hospitable, human population also starts increasing. They need more food, and animals, the food base is changing. So you have to therefore upgrade your technology to suit the requirement. जैसे कि when you prepare for prelims, you prepare different way. For mains, different way. Similarly, the hunt will decide the kind of tool you have in your hand. Right? Same thing happens here. So with increase in population, Also, hunting and gathering no longer sufficient. There is domestication of animals. So this is the first thing, that you start domesticating animals so that you can satisfy various purposes. Either you want to use dog for hunting, you want to go for herding for milk, you want to use wool, you want to use meat, anything. So for different reasons at different points of time, animal domestication starts. Pet animal banna shuru hote hain. The earliest evidence of animal husbandry has been found at Bagor in Rajasthan and Adamgarh in Madhya Pradesh in case of India. But which are the animals which are first domesticated? The oldest one is possibly dog. Dog is the oldest animal domesticated in Eurasia, and then you have different animals at different time. The most recent is duck. So you have dog, then you have sheep, then you have goat, you have pig, then cow, etc., etc. Different animals at different point of time are domesticated. There is the entire story of these animals getting domesticated. Kyun hua tha? Is it, for example, cat? Why was cat domesticated? She ostensibly does not perform any function, at least at that point of time. What are the reasons? Then how the domestication could happen? Process kya thi? So we don't need to go there. That is not our field. But it's a very interesting subject if you have interest in those things. So domestication starts. The moment you have domestication, you are no more hunter. You are also herder. You are also charwaha. That kind of life starts for the first. Now you see how it affects rest of the life. Here you have tools and technology changing. Now you go for smaller tools. These are called as microliths. Microliths are small tools of different shape up to 3 centimeter. The maximum size is 3 centimeter only. I have some photos here, and here you can see this tool is on the finger. You can see the relative size just to get the vibe of it. How small these tools are. How can you use these tools? You can't. Then how do you make them? Because you don't use them individually, singly. You put them together to create a composite tool. So they are in recurring geometric patterns. You just put them together. For example, you have small triangular tool. You put it at the top of a wooden stick. Ban gaya bhala, spear. You may have arrows like this. Why do you need spears and arrows? It is no more brute force like this. Spears and arrows can be thrown from long distance. The deer is running. So you have also evolved geometric tools. You understand the projectile motion now. You know projectile motion, समझते हो? So दूर से hunt करने के लिए. So you have such kind of tools evolving. So tool technology becomes more complex. Now remember, tools were not made only of stones. They were also made of wood. They were also made of bones. The oldest surviving bone tools come from a place called Langanaj in Gujarat. Langanaj in Gujarat. Bone tools. वो भी है. Then you come to dwelling sites. They are also quite interesting. As the population increases, people migrate and occupy more and more area of India. And it is here because they are herding. In herding, what happens? You go to a place, stay there for a few days. Once the grass gets over, you move to new place. So what you have is semi-permanent location. Not permanent, but semi-permanent. Seasonal migrations take place. Example, in Himalayas. In Himalayas, we have something called as transhumans, right? In winter region, you come downwards. In summer region, you go upwards. So seasonal migration. Similarly, in this part, like Vindhya to Ganga, Ganga to Vindhya. So we have those sites where for 3 months, for 6 months, you have dwelling sites, and then season changes, people go back to different places. So seasonal migration start here. So temporary dwelling because of nomadic life, but it is semi-nomadic life now. Now, what are the important sites here? We find them across India, but some important sites are Bagor in Rajasthan, Bhimbetka obviously in Madhya Pradesh, Damdama, Mahadaha, Chopani Mando, Baghai Khor, and Lekhahiya in Uttar Pradesh. All of them are in Kaimur Hills, in Mirzapur district, Banaras ke आसपास, है ना? So this is the very fag end of the Vindhya region. Then you have Bir Bhanpur in West Bengal, Ballari in Karnataka, and then Tuticorin in Tamil Nadu. More than this, there are many more sites. There are some example sites. And finally, you come to society, how social structure is evolving. Now in the grasslands, if humans are going into the grasslands to hunt, grasslands don't have the rock dwellings. वो तो आपने छोड़ दिए. Now you come back to flat region. So here you have to construct your artificial dwellings. So we have the beginning for the first time of ghar. So our dwellings made of animal skin tents, wattle and daub huts with thatched roofs. You know wattle and daub क्या होता है? It's very simple. You have something, for example, you take bamboo sticks or some other wood, you just create some kind of matrix of those sticks. It is your wall. On the wall, you take the wet mud and then daub it. बन गई दीवार. It's a wall. So wattle and daub. The wattle and daub. So simple, because the bricks are not yet discovered. Other invented. ब्रिक्स बाद में आएंगे. ब्रिक्स में जो पहली बार आएंगे, फर्स्ट टाइम ब्रिक्स वुड कम, दे वुड बी मैन मेड, हैंड मेड ब्रिक्स, सन ड्राइड ब्रिक्स. सो ब्रिक टेक्नोलॉजी अपने आप में इवॉल्व्स ग्रेजुअली लेटर ऑन. Wattle and daub, or you may have the skin tents, but skin tents obviously wouldn't survive. Here society gradually evolves from band into tribe. Tribe has relatively larger size, could be 200, could be 500, it could be up to a few thousands also. And in a tribe, although it is egalitarian, it is not completely egalitarian. It has some power structure. Some power structure. So, for the first time, the concept of society is evolving. We are no more in isolation. We are no more so much solitary as we used to be earlier. Okay? So, some kind of tribal structure evolving. And then you have belief in the afterlife also. Because you can imagine God, you start for burials. So artificial burials emerge now properly at a place where you have seasonal migrations. And they are very interesting. How do we know they are thoughtful burials? Generally, without exception, they come east and west direction. Mein. That is one. So they must have some thought, the direction of sun's emergence, for example. And this is interesting because you know, seasonally direction changes. If this is a village, some river is there, I build some houses here and there, and I want to bury some dead. Let us say I bury dead over here. And my mythology at this point of time is the leg of a person should be in the direction of sunrise. So in some season, sun rises from here, ये ऐसे bury करेंगे. After some months or some years, somebody else dies. At that time, sun is rising from this direction, तो burial ऐसे होगा. Because you are tracking sun direction. Right? Simple. So we have those differences of angles also that tell us sun's direction was consciously followed for burial. So there must be some mythology, some story. Again, we are dependent on archaeology, not on literature, so we can't access the story. But है जैसे कि if you go to Chopani Mando, now Chopani Mando is a very famous place in Uttar Pradesh where we have found some burials, interestingly, with their feet chopped off. Feet chopped off. Why? They might run, or you love them so much that even after death, you don't want them to go away. Some stories of afterlife. If you go to Mehergarh in Balochistan, you will see that burial happens where? Generally between the common gully of two houses. ये घर, ये नेबर का घर, बीच में रास्ता, वहीं पे burial होगा. So they may have some other story. In much later era, in the Chalcolithic era, यहाँ से 1000 साल बाद, we'll see that maybe tomorrow if possible. In the Chalcolithic era, you will see when the burial happens. पता है location of burial क्या है? Bedroom of their house. In their own house, they dig their own bedroom region, and beneath that, they bury their old parents or whosoever has died, and then they use that house again because they want to feel the closeness with the dead. आज तो हम घबरा जाएंगे. But again, different cultures had different stories to tell, different belief systems. Then the rock paintings, the Mesolithic era is very important for rock paintings. It is the time when you have profusion, massive, Bhimbetka ke massive paintings come from Mesolithic era, and we have to study that in detail in the next lecture. So I will not touch rock painting right now. We have a topic of rock painting. पढ़ेंगे उसको कल. And in religion is evolving. You have primitive animism, nature worship. What is animism? You know, have you heard about animism? What is animism? What kind of objects? Don't mix the two. It could be anything, living or non-living, because of some reason, either things being, you being awestruck by the things, you being afraid of things, you not understanding things, you being dependent on strings. You don't know, but we feel there is some great power in them. It could be worship of river, worship of sun, worship of mountains, worship of trees, worship of land, worship of monsoon, rain, any natural phenomenon, or even living people, living animals, etc. You can worship all of them. You presume that some spirit suffuses through this, and then you find them to be interconnected with each other with some divine spirit. Am I right? है ना? So this is called animism. So we see the beginning here. That's a possibility. That's a possibility. This is the era of Mesolithic. एक बात रह गई, वो थी पॉटरी की. पॉटरी के बारे में we have a very interesting observation. It was initially presumed that pottery starts when the agriculture starts, because you go for rice cultivation or wheat cultivation, and then you have the grains. Where do you store the grains? In pottery. Where do you cook that kind of food? Pottery. So maybe agriculture precedes pottery, and it does so in many places. In many places, agriculture starts first, pottery appears very soon afterwards. But it is not universal law. There are examples of pottery starting even before agriculture. The most famous example is again Langanaj in Gujarat. Why? Why do you need pottery before agriculture? For cooking. You may not need pottery for storing grain, but you need pottery for cooking also. So theoretically it is possible, practically it has happened. So in the Mesolithic era, you have microliths, you have animal domestication and herding, and you also have pottery beginning. Okay. And gods and painting, the other thing which may have started in the upper paleo becomes popular or prominent now. Then you come to Neolithic. I think we should stop here. This topic will take half an hour, है ना? तो बीच में रोक नहीं पाएंगे, तो 5 मिनट जल्दी खत्म करते हैं, कल मिलेंगे. ठीक है? Is it clear? Any doubt? Any query? Offline, online? Are you able to follow? Are you finding history very boring? Sir, during the white man's burden, yes, Gauri, correct. During the Pleistocene era, since there were permafrost, what was the flora and vegetation like? See, permafrost, Gauri, was not covering entire Earth. Today, it is in very short, small places. Its proportion was much higher back then, but not everywhere. There are both domesticated, tamed animals, same. We can use them in a very non-scientific sense correctly. Yes, animism तो बात हो गई. ठीक है. Any other doubt? Online? How many of you are in the course and how many of you are online students? How many of you are new totally? Please, if yes, please type in the comment box. ऑफलाइन डाउट्स ठीक है, धीरे धीरे आप दोस्ती हो जाएंगी. हाँ, viewers, they are there. So this is not a very updated theory. Now we are breaking those barriers with latest research. from other species also? We don't know. We have to find the species also, na? Need to have bones of those species then, right? Okay. Online, in course, in course, in course, in course, online, 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 3.0 बैच, 3.0 बैच. अच्छा, ये क्या है 3.0 बैच? यहाँ भी देख रहे हैं. लेटेस्ट बैच, ओके, राइट, 3.0 बैच, ठीक है. न्यू इन कोर्स, ओके, यस. इंडियन स्क्रिप्ट्स, scripts, yes. Tamil also comes from same Brahmi script, Tamil Brahmi script. That is not the point. Language may originate anywhere. Language may belong to same family, different family. Scripts have come from Brahmi. ठीक, because we have 4 to 5 language families in India. Indo-Aryan language family, Dravidian language family, then Tibeto-Burman, and then और भी दो है. The point is that despite linguistic diversity, we have scriptural unity of sorts. Yes. ठीक है. डिबेट कहाँ पे आता है? बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंगली बताता हूँ आपको. Debate comes about the location of the origin of Brahmi. Now, this is the map of India. Brahmi, for the first time, the word lipi, not Brahmi, lipi in script is mentioned where? In Panini's Ashtadhyayi. Panini came from a place called Shalatur, which is somewhere in Pakistan today, in Gandhar region, near Sialkot. ठीक है. It is the region where Indian civilization was in touch with the Iranian civilization. Iranian people started writing before us. So there is a possibility that writing came from this, and that's why it is but natural for script to come in this era first. That's why Panini mentioned script. It is possible. Theoretically sound, logical also. But the problem is, theory वाले लोग एक होते हैं, evidence वाले लोग दूसरे होते हैं. So if you go by the written evidence in India, until a few decades ago, we thought it is Ashokan edicts, which are spread across India in Pali language and Brahmi script, including every. Now we have found the possible evidences of pre-Ashokan Brahmi, and where we have found them in South India, this region, including Sri Lanka, Anuradhapur, Puranthur, Kodumanal, etc., in Vaigai Valley and other regions. And suddenly everybody is shocked. How is it possible that script emerged in Tamil Nadu or Sri Lanka and spread everywhere, while language and other culture spreading from, matlab ye kya chal, it's so complex. So I read one book where a person imagined that script came from here, reached Bengal, then by ocean it went to Sri Lanka, from Sri Lanka it went to Tamil Nadu. Now this is called Calisthenics, Dravidi Pranayam. We don't know. Simple point is, we have not found all the evidences. There are lots of missing pieces in the puzzle. We don't have any solution to this. I discovered recently, last month only, or few weeks ago rather, Brahmi was not called even Brahmi till 19th century. It had no name. It is the British who gave the name Brahmi to it. In the Jain scriptures, Brahmi is a name of script. In other, even the Brahmi एक नाम है, but ये इस script का नाम नहीं था. But इस script को कोई भी नाम नहीं था. So British chose, let us call it Brahmi. Then some Buddhist thinkers are something, people are disliking this name Brahmi, because the oldest evidence come from Ashoka for them, जो कि आज incorrect है, but उनका argument होता था अब तक. So why we should not call it Dhammalipi? So you'll see some books, some authors who prefer the word Dhammalipi and not Brahmi for it. But again, these are debates that will go on. Brahmi is a word that is used for almost 150 years now, standard name academically, and anyway it is one script. Okay. So these are some areas on which UPSC will not ask you any question, because nobody knows about them. Okay. Anyway, chalo then, let us stop. Parth has done already in the prelims. Parth, तो फिर सो जाओ, बढ़िया आराम कर लो यार, क्यों दोबारा देख रहे हो? Okay, we'll meet tomorrow. Tata. Thank you.